resources, inspiring interviews, business practices, and practical advice to take your art career to the next level. Join Sergio Gomez in today's Artist Next Level and get ready to take control of your career.
Hello, my next level friends, Sergio Gomez here, and I want to welcome you once again to another episode of the Our Next Level podcast. Today, I have a great interview to share with you with Dr. Elaine Melotti Schmidt. Elaine spent her work career facilitating the education of younger students. As teacher and administrator, she was involved in creating learning environments for students with special learning needs. Elaine is now spending her time and energy on a number of other projects she holds close to her heart. She lives with her husband, Stephen Alan Bennett, in San Antonio, Texas. She and Steve are art collectors who specialize in realist paintings of women by women artists. This undertaking has afforded them the opportunity to create a collection of women experiencing various emotions from all walks of life, as well as to meet many creative artists. The couple recently launched the Bennett Prize, designed to propel the careers of women painters who are or seek to become full-time professional painters. Elaine is also the curator for Visions of Venus, which opens Friday, April 20th at the Zhou B Center here in Chicago. And I'm super excited to have in the podcast today, Dr. Elaine Melotti Schmidt. Hi, Elaine. How are you doing today?
Fine, Sergio. How are you?
I am doing great. I want to welcome you to the Art Next Level podcast. We are super excited that you are here with us today. Are you ready to take us to the next level?
I am. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I think it's going to be a great conversation. I have been looking forward to this time, and so I think it's going to be awesome. It's going to be really good. And prior to starting the podcast, I was just saying that today is such a nice day because it's like the first day that is actually nice and warm here in Chicago. So I feel awesome. I feel great. And there's no better place to be sitting here with you right now, talking about upcoming projects, talking about this awesome show that's going to open up pretty soon, and we're going to tell our friends about. And it's just been great. So how's the weather over there for where you're at right now?
Actually, I'm in San Antonio, Texas today, and the weather is fabulous. It was 50 this morning, and this afternoon it's sunny and high 70s. So it's a beautiful day here.
That's awesome. That's wonderful. And, it's one of those things I always look forward to the springtime because that's like a new beginning for me. After being hiding for all this winter, time to get out the door and really enjoy the outdoors and look. And also, it's a great opportunity to go out and look at more art, visit more openings, and so on. And so it's always a great time. And what a great way to kick off the spring here in Chicago with the show Visions of Venus that's going to open up here at the Zhou B Center also pretty soon. And we're going to invite our friends to come along, and we're going to tell them all about that show as well.
Okay. Yes. Lots of energy in the spring.
So, Elaine, we had a chance to meet last year when you and your husband came to Chicago also to see the show that we had last year, also co-curated with Didi and I, and we had a great conversation, and you walked through the show, looked at the work, added one piece to your beautiful collection as well. And so it was really nice to meet you in person, and now to have this conversation. Back then, it was just the beginning of the talks about this show, Visions of Venus, and now we are here, and it's been a year in the making. So many artists involved behind the scenes. Didi Menendez also, working very hard with us to get this show ready. And, that is kind of the culmination of a whole year of work, which I think it feels pretty nice to have this conversation right now, right at the verge of opening the show. But before we talk about the show itself, I would love to know a little bit about your story, Elaine, because, I've heard so many great things about yourself. The more I know about you through Didi and also to the things that I've been reading. And I'm dying to hear more about your story, where you grew up, how you became interested in art, and, what leads you to this moment. If you can kind of share some highlights of that would be awesome.
Oh, thank you, Sergio. Well, I guess I just view myself as a typical middle-class American child. I started my life in Michigan, and then when I was in high school, I moved to Massachusetts. And I went to a very good high school that focused on the liberal arts. And so I had the requisite art history class. And that, I think, gave me a good foundation. I was fortunate enough to travel quite a bit. I've lived overseas twice.
Okay.
And so my love of art and architecture and different cultures grew during those different. I lived in England for 6 years and in Jerusalem for a year. So I had kind of the Middle Eastern culture and the European culture. And really, I just loved going to museums and reading books. And so self-taught's not the right word. You just acquire knowledge along the way. And I was very fortunate. I've been to some of the most beautiful museums in the world and lived 90 minutes from London, which meant many visits to the Tate and places there. So fast forward, Steve Bennett, my current husband, and I started to date a little over 10 years ago.
Okay.
And it was really a time for new beginnings for both of us. And he had been a professional photographer before he became a lawyer. So he always had an interest in art. And we began to talk about what we wanted to put on our walls. And we went through phases. We started with, at first it was going to be some of his photographs. And then it was going to be stamps enlarged, Czechoslovakian stamps. They're gorgeous. And we were going to have them enlarged, made into posters. And we just kept talking and reading, and how you go back and forth. And one day I can remember he said to me, I love figurative realism. And I said, well, actually, I do too. So we both started to explore looking at more paintings, and that was the point that he discovered. I need to give him the credit that female or women artists tend to be underrepresented in galleries and museums. They don't earn as much money. I just saw an article a couple of weeks ago. The top 15 paid artists in the world last year were all men.
Wow.
So so he said it was really two levels. One, to promote women, and then the other actually is women's works don't command the same price as men. So we define the collection as women who paint women.
Okay.
And that was about 8 or 9 years ago, and since then we laugh. I think our taste has gotten better, or maybe we just think it's better. Or, you learn. You learn as you collect. And so we've always both loved art. We actually, ironically, met on eHarmony. And one of the first things we talked about in writing was art.
Wow, wonderful.
Yes, we always art, music, literature, those things that feed your soul and make your life rich.
Right.
And so we currently have over 150 paintings, and we have both since retired, and a lot of our energy and our passion goes towards trying to promote art and women artists in particular, figurative realism. Not that everybody always says, don't you like men's art? No, we love men's art. We also love things besides figurative realism. But we just thought to help us collect and have a decision point that we made things around. Because honestly, we've seen many other things that we've looked at each other and said, oh, we'd like to buy that, but it won't fit in our collection. And that actually is a good discipline to have, we think.
Fabulous. And now, do you remember the first piece that you bought, like when you decided, both of you, you and Steven, decided to start the collection with this focus? Do you remember the first piece? Was it hard to select? Did you both agree on the first piece?
The first piece wasn't too hard to agree on. I think as our taste, it's interesting. We always talk about our taste as like a Venn diagram.
Okay.
There's overlap in the middle. But Steve tends to like edgier, really out there pieces.
Okay.
And I probably like more romantic realism and tender paintings. We both look for craftsmanship and creativity and execution. But in terms of the concept behind it, there's a divergence there. And so we probably spend more time negotiating which pieces we're buying and then where we're going to hang them.
Yeah, that's the next thing I was going to ask you.
Yes, than anything else in our marriage. And so what I've learned two things. One is if Steve wants to hang a painting someplace, just go with it because we're going to be changing everything in 3 months anyways.
Wonderful. That's a great way to do it. Mm-hmm.
Yes, and so because we're always fluid, and the second thing is that it is okay for him to like things that I don't like, and for me to like things that he doesn't like, and that's fine.
That's wonderful.
Just like any good relationship, I think you just have to get to that point. So.
Right. And do you, like let's say you go to an exhibition, you see a work that Steven hasn't seen yet, but then you're getting really excited for that artist or that piece, then do you guys like immediately talk about ideas, or do you have like meetings in which you share, what you have seen and we have seen, or how does that happen for both of you? I'm just really curious because it's fabulous what both of you are doing. The focus that you're giving to the focus you're giving to your collection, and also other things that we're gonna talk about later too that you are doing that's helping the specific focus that you have on the collection. But I just love the story of how both of you work behind the scenes, to make it happen, and how do you agree on what pieces, because I know it's very exciting when you look at a piece that you really want, and then the conversations that follow after.
Yes. Yeah, she says. Typically, both of us look, we go to galleries, we look online, we look at different magazines, and we go to different shows. And so sometimes we're together when we see a piece. And Steve typically will say, "What do you think of it?" And so then I comment, and then we, have a dialogue over it. If one or the other of us sees it first, then we almost always show it to the other person and then talk about it. And we actually, like I said, we have a natural overlap, but then we also have divergence. And then occasionally my husband will purchase a piece, especially one he doesn't think I'm going to like. And it's always when we have company, I say, "You're just like a teenager. You drop the news when you think you've got people there to protect you." And we had an art hanger here, and he said, "Oh, well, we need to move this because a certain piece is going to go there." And I said, "What piece?" And he said, "Oh, I guess I'd better show it to you because we're going to have." Yeah, well, he knew he hadn't told me. He says, "But we're having dinner with the artist at Art Basel." And I said, "Oh, okay, yes, I better see it." Now, actually, in that case, I loved the painting. He didn't get me right on that one. So sometimes that's happened 2 or 3 or 4 times. So, but I just kind of, like I said, you go with the flow, right?
Right. Those are the cool surprises, right? That makes for good stories as well. That then you can talk about in the podcast like this one.
It does. And sometimes, honestly, I didn't like something originally, and I've grown to love it. So, there's always room for personal growth and change, and recognition that the other person sees something that you don't see yet.
Right. And I think that's one of the really beautiful things about art, right? That, when a person comes to a piece, you may appreciate some things, and really because you appreciate certain things about the piece, in a subconscious level, we are ignoring other parts of the piece that may also be very interesting. That only until we start spending time with the piece, whether we live with it because it's part of our collection or because we continue to see them at a museum or at a gallery and so on. Like you said, you start to grow with the piece as well and discover other things that almost become surprises in a way when you start to discover them. Just this morning, I'd like to sit down when I get up in the morning and do my reading and some devotions and things like that. I sit in different parts of the house. And this morning I was sitting in front of a painting that we have in our collection in our living room and just looking at the piece this morning, just staring at it, as I was, getting ready for the day, was like, oh man, that corner right there reminds me of something I'm actually going through right now. And but something I never noticed before, and it's been there for like 3 years.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Sometimes it's our life experiences that gives us a different lens we're looking at the painting with, and then you get some of what the artist was trying to convey. I totally agree with you.
Absolutely. Now, in terms of following an artist, because this conversation is also, I think, interesting because, artists listen to this podcast and sometimes they wonder, how do artists get in front of collectors like yourselves or others? When you find an artist, do you follow the artist for a while before actually approaching the artist, or in something you may be interested? What is kind of that process for you, and how, maybe in a practical way, what artists can do to be make themselves visible to people like you?
That's a good question. We start to, I guess there's maybe 3 different ways. One is sometimes people like Dee Dee or John Dalton will recommend for us to look at a certain artist that they think might fit within our collection. And so we will follow up on that and look them up. And if it's somebody we think we're going to, be interested in, then we start either looking at their website or following them on Instagram or Facebook, depending upon, what they tend to use. And other times we've seen works through the years, and we have a list of people that we would like to collect when a painting that resonates with us comes along. So we also tend to follow individuals like that. And then probably the best surprise is always when you're gallery hopping or going to a show and you find somebody you didn't know existed and they do beautiful things that you resonate with. And in those cases, we tend to buy something and then follow them either, again, through the website or online. And we it's not a hard and fast rule, but many times if we buy one piece, we like to buy a second piece to get a snapshot of the same artist with a slightly different twist to it, to kind of, give a little more richness to the collection, balance perhaps. So we actually spend a fair amount of time searching and looking, but when you love art, you enjoy it.
Exactly.
So
I think in that sense, it's important for artists to continue make themselves visible on their socials and sharing and process and finished pieces and so on, right? So that they could be found and seen.
Yes, my I guess my one caveat is that sometimes I think people overexpose their work.
Okay.
That by the time it's finished, you've seen it 50 times, and it's that you just lose interest. It's like, okay, that's an old piece, which is actually why for the Visions of Venus's Vision show, we asked that the work hadn't been previously seen to give it, because I wanted, and Dee Dee agreed, fresh work, something that people hadn't seen, 50 times. I'm sure you've had the same experience. There are things that you've seen so many times, you're saying, okay, I've seen that. So don't overexpose, I guess, is my one warning.
Excellent. Now, that's great advice. One of the things that I've seen now that I think since Instagram rolled out the ability to post multiple pictures in one post, where now, you can post in one post, you can post like 3 or 4 of the process, but then you have it all there. So you can see the finished piece plus 3 or 4 of the process pieces right in one spot versus having, like you said, overly done.
Yes. No, I think, and that makes sense because that's a developmental kind of image rather than the same picture.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Well, I think it's a great time since you mentioned Visions of Venus. Let's talk about that show. So tell us a little bit about how the idea came out, that conversation with Didi on the show's theme. Tell us a little bit how that happened.
Steve and I were at Art Basel a year ago last December, and there was a Poets Artist show being held there. And so we went to the opening at Serona.
Okay. Oh, okay. And so I was there too, because, I guess we didn't meet back then. Yeah, I co-curated the show with Didi. So both of us.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't realize you were there. So that opening night, I was just walking around looking at the pieces, and Didi and I started to talk, and we had a lovely conversation. So then about 6 weeks later, she wrote and said, would I be interested in curating an art show? And she had an idea in mind that didn't come to fruition, but then a different idea came along. And so she asked me, and I said, well, that would be something interesting and unique. And so then I started to think about what the show could, what the call would look like. And in part because Steve and I do approach our selection of art somewhat differently. I thought of the whole Mars-Venus, analogy or metaphor that people talk about. And then then it developed, and you think, well, if it's all visions of Venus, that's limiting. And I wanted to have a very broad call so that an artist could really get in touch with their creativity and take it where they wanted to take it. Right. And that's why it was Venus's visions too, because if you think about that, that's very broad, and almost anything could fit within that. Right. And so that's how it came about.
Beautiful. And having myself been involved because of the my job here at the Zhou B Art Center as curator, seeing all the pieces as they have been selected, as you have been doing the work of selection, it's going to be an amazing show. It's going to be, like you said, a wide gamut of ideas, some very out there, which I can't wait for friends to come and see the exhibition. It's going to be great. And it's going to open on April 20th at the Zhou B Art Center. The show opens on the 20th and runs all the way to June 8th of 2018 this year. So we are just a few days away from the opening. And from our conversations, I know that a lot of artists are also coming in to the opening. Tell us a little bit about that, the selection of the artists. They are all from all around the country, correct?
Well, actually, they're from all around the world.
Around the world, yeah. Let's just say that.
Yes. We had about 250 entries.
Wow.
And really from all over the world. And it's very exciting. There's a lot of wonderful pieces. And actually, there were a lot of wonderful pieces that didn't make it into the show just because, well, that's why, remember towards the end, I said, how many big paintings can you take? Because so many people are painting big.
I know.
Yeah, it's very exciting. And we have about 25 artists coming to the opening night. And beautiful. I think it's going to be quite a celebration. Good way to launch the show. And it's been fun because, artists network and they help each other and depend on each other, and this is going to be another opportunity for them to get together. And somebody said to me, oh, I admire so and so much, I actually get to meet them. Well, that's very cool.
Exactly. Yeah,
it's a very cool thing.
It's a wonderful opportunity for the artists. What do you envision for the public to come in to see the show? What do you envision that they will get from the exhibition?
I think they're going to get that there are a variety of highly talented people that can take a concept and develop it in divergent ways and do it well.
Mm-hmm.
So, this show, one thing, it is not about conformity.
Right.
And we have an assemblage, we have 4 sculptures. Actually, I'm very much looking forward to seeing how you curate the show in the hanging.
Right.
Because actually what I did was I printed out all the final, well, I printed out all the last like 100, and I tried to lay out the show
Oh,
so
okay.
so that there are some things that in my head I thought they should be close to each other or paired together, and that if only one had been chosen, it would look like it didn't belong. So I'm actually very curious as
That
to
would be
how.
interesting. Yeah.
Yes, it will be very interesting. And initially, I thought we might have equal numbers of visions of Venus and Venus's visions, and that you'd have 2 strands.
Yeah.
But it didn't turn out that way. So
Well,
I'm going to be looking at how you hang the show.
very good. Yeah, that's quite. It's gonna be fun. The way I usually hang the show is like after we unpack everything, I like to just have it visible for a while, and I just walk and walk until things start to the conversation starts to happen. And I think that's what a show is. It's a conversation that begins with the artist in the studio, continues with the curator selecting the work, with the installers, the gallery, and then it ends with the public also coming into that conversation, right? And
Yes, absolutely.
that's how I see it, and I look forward to opening all those boxes. That's when I hang a show, that's my favorite part is not really the hanging, is to opening the boxes and receiving the artwork. After you see the photographs, nothing ever, no matter how good of a photograph it is, it never replicates the beauty of an actual work of art, right? In whatever medium it may be.
Yes, that's true.
And there's just something special about when we unpack a piece and it's like, wow, that's amazing, and then comes the next one, completely different piece, and the next one, and the sad part is when we have to pack it all again.
Yes.
and
Well, it's
say
almost
goodbye.
like Christmas, isn't it?
Exactly. But they take your gifts away at the end of the show.
Yes. So, well, we're hoping some of the pieces will sell, or most of the
Of course,
pieces
yeah, and
will
they will
sell.
go to.
Yes.
The idea is that they will go to new homes so that they can get appreciated, of course, as well. And so let's talk also a little bit about other projects that you have. I know you've been very busy with this particular exhibition, and we're super thankful for all your work here at the Joby Art Center.
my pleasure.
Very excited for the work that you and your husband Stephen have put the hours to make this happen, and we look forward to that and to continue working with you. But tell us, there's more things that you both are doing to help artists, and one of these things is what is called the Bennett Prize. And so tell us about this, because I'm actually in the website right now. I'm looking at the website for the Bennett Prize right now. So can you tell our friends here at the Next Level, what's the Bennett Prize? And, tell us about the call for entries.
Well, the Bennett Prize has been developed to really launch the career of somebody who is a female or a woman who has not received full professional recognition. And that is defined as someone who has not sold one piece of art for $25,000 or more.
Okay.
And it is going to be a stipend that will be for $50,000 that's going to be paid out over a 2-year period that will allow the winner to mount a solo show at the end of 2 years. That's going to be at the Muskegon Museum of Art in Michigan.
Beautiful.
And there are going to be 10 finalists from which the finalist is chosen, and there will be a finalist show that will be held next year.
Fabulous. So there's 2 shows. There's the person who receives the award, and then also the finalist.
Yes, and the finalist show is going to be a traveling show. Well, actually, the finalist show is going to be a traveling show too, which means it will visit 4 or 5 or 6 museums around the United States.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, so hopefully it will help promote different women's careers. And can I just clarify 2 things that keep coming up? One is, for the first time out, we didn't want to have people ship their work for the shows across U.S. borders because of customs and the potential for duty, etc.
Right.
So the painting, it doesn't need to be an American citizen, the woman, but the paintings have to be in the U.S.
Okay.
To facilitate that. And then the prize is designed for someone who would like eventually to be a full-time painter. But if you're, teaching some classes right now, that's fine.
Okay.
Because the reality is it's very difficult to get to the level where you don't need to do something else in order to be an artist. So I just wanted to clarify those two things. And the call for I'm sorry. The call for entry it opens Friday, and off we go.
Awesome. So it opens Friday, the 20th, or before that?
The 13th. Well, it opens April 13th, which is
April 13th. Okay.
The week before the Venus show.
Perfect. So that way our friends who are listening to this podcast, whenever they listen to it, so April 13th, that's when it opens, the call opens to the public. And now how can our friends, artists who may be interested on this call can submit? Where do they need to go?
Well, there's a website that has been established through the Pittsburgh Foundation that is called the Bennett Prize. So you can either go to the Pittsburgh Foundation's homepage and it's posted there, or if you put into Google search the Bennett Prize, it will come up.
That's how I found it. Yeah.
Yes. And all the the specifications and lots of the questions that people have been having are answered there. And if not, there's a place where you can email questions and either somebody at the foundation who's our partner, or we will get back to the person asking the question.
Fabulous. And for how long will the call be open?
Oh, I was afraid you were going to ask me that. I think it's the end of September. So it's a number of months.
Oh, yeah. Actually, I just found it. Yeah, September 28th. So there's plenty of time. Plenty of time for our friends. If you're listening to the podcast and that is something that you're interested, definitely check it out. You have until September 28th of 2018 at 11:59 p.m. to apply for this. Very awesome. That's fantastic, Elaine. And both what you and your husband Stephen are doing is just amazing. Not only you have this commitment and in words, but also in deeds. In actually putting off your own effort, money, and this to really help make a difference in an artist's life. And that is really, really something that I want to thank you for. On behalf of the art community, because it's rare.
Oh, well, you're too kind. It's really an honor for us to be able to support these talented, creative people who work so hard.
Right.
And, maybe allow a few more people to be able to, be able to sell enough paintings or have enough recognition so that they can paint.
Absolutely. And is the Bennett Prize something that both of you had been thinking about it for a while? How did the idea come out? I'm really interested in the story behind it.
It was, Steve and I were just talking about that. It was about 2.5 years ago, and we were in Chicago.
Okay.
And it was a Saturday morning, and he said to me, what do you think about some kind of prize for female painters or women painters? And it's actually evolved a lot since then, but it was, I will give him credit. It was his original idea, but we've built it together. In the Pittsburgh Foundation, they have this division that's called co-creation. And so you can give your money and you state your intent, but then they will work with you. They don't just take your money and say, okay, we're going to do it. You're a partner. And it's been great. I mean, actually, it's been great because, the more ideas you have on a strong team, the better the final product is. And they have some experts who have just been fabulous. And then now that we have partnered with the the art gallery in Michigan, Muskegon. They also have their expertise they bring to the table. And so
Fabulous.
I've learned a lot. I can tell you I've learned a lot about digital media. And it's and analytics and all that stuff around that. So it's been fabulous, actually. It's been good for Steve and I too.
Fabulous. So happy. And there's also a jury panel, right? That will be part of the selection process. It's not just you and your husband.
No, actually, I'm not on the panel.
Oh, okay.
we have two women artists. Maria Tamasuda, she's at Notre Dame, yes, and Andrea Couch, or Coach, however you say it. She's an amazing artist. And then Art Martin, he's the curator at the Muskegon, and then Steve.
Wonderful. And what a great panel.
Yes, I think, that they'll have diverse views, and it's a very powerful panel.
Wonderful. Well, we wish you the best on this project too, and also, we'll be looking forward to see both exhibitions, the selection of the artists, and also the finalist show as it travels around as well. We'll be reporting on that as well, and that's just amazing. Keep us on the loop on how things are going with that as well.
Oh, thank you so much for helping us get the word out. We really appreciate that.
Of course. So, and Elaine, as we kind of start to wrap it up for the day here in our conversation, what are the things you've been working on? Because I know that you are so busy, all these things related to the art, including secondary meanings. So tell us a little bit about what that is.
Yes, with Sergio and Didi again. But this time Steve and I are co-curating, and it is figural diptychs. And so this is going to be fascinating because clearly in a diptych there has to be a relationship between both visually as well as conceptually behind the diptych, and it can be a triptych. So it's pretty, other than that, it's pretty wide open. It's figurative realism again. But it's open to men and women. And the show will be at the Zhou B Art Center in May 2019. So start painting.
Exactly. We're planning for that already. So keep your eyes open.
We are.
Keep your eyes open for everybody, all our friends. And, also as we close, so we want to also take a minute to thank Didi Menendez for all the work that she does, for bringing us together for this particular project as well. She does so much work for artists and helping them out in their careers too, and doing these partnerships with people like you and Steven to provide opportunities for artists to show, to sell their work as well. Yes. And it's really to make this a thriving community at the end of the day, I think, for all artists. And I think that's just wonderful to be able to create these partnerships in which we can collaborate and do great things for the community.
That's true. And she actually, Poets and Artists, their website, they have the call for entries for secondary meanings. It's posted. So if anybody's interested, that's where they can get additional information from. Fabulous.
Yeah, and they can also find Poets and Artists in Instagram. You search for Poets and Artists, and you can find them there as well.
Yes.
Elaine, it's been such a pleasure to have this conversation with you. Thank you for giving us an insight behind the scenes, telling us some of the personal stories behind your collection, behind the exhibition and the Bennett Prize. I love those stories, because we see the end result, but I love to go behind the scenes and hear, some of those experiences. Those are really valuable. And thank you for sharing them with us.
No, thank you for having me. And I look forward to seeing you soon.
Exactly. Any last words, Elaine, before we close?
Well, we just hope that people will be able to come and see Visions of Venus and Venus's Visions while it's up at the Zhou B. And there's parking, so you don't have to worry about that. Yes, yes, and it's beautiful facility, just beautiful. So, as you said earlier in the conversation, spring brings new energy because of the good weather. It's time to get out and start feeding your mind and your soul.
Absolutely. It's going to be a great time. We're going to have a full house. Also, artist studios will be open, and it's just going to be a great celebration of art at the Zhou B Art Center. Join us on April 20th from 7 to 10 p.m. And if you cannot make it for the 20th, the show will be open all the way to June 8th, 2018. So thanks, Elaine, again. Please give your all regards to your husband, Steven as well. We look forward to seeing you both on the 20th here in Chicago. And I want to thank everyone who listened to this podcast. If you found it interesting, please share it with a friend. If you can help us that way, that would be an awesome way in which we can get the word out to more artists as well about the show, about the Bennett Prize, and everything that's happening here in the podcast. So thanks again for listening, and I will see you at the next level.
Check out our website at www.theartistnextlevel.com, where you will find our podcast library, learn about our upcoming webinars, find resources relevant to your career, and much more. Thanks for listening to today's podcast, and we'll see you at the next level.